Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed, your wildlife photography and outdoor adventure podcast. This week's show's hosts are Michael Mauro and myself, Mark Raycroft. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you can tell right out of the gate that we are in the Alaskan wilderness. We're here photographing moose this morning, and we have met up with somebody that we've met on social media, on Instagram, and have become friends with, Jerry Herrod from Anchorage, Alaska. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
This is quite a backyard you have up here in Alaska.
Yeah, we're pretty blessed to have this. I mean, it's just, a short drive from the house, and you can come out and get into the backcountry pretty quick.
And there's so much up here. I mean, well, it's a fair hike in. There's effort to it, for sure. And not necessarily for the faint of heart, because of the fun we had yesterday.
Yeah.
We met up, and a few days ago, we had the good time of sitting down and sharing a pizza together, and I'd asked you what your favorite animal was to photograph, and you had mentioned, of course, Dall Sheep.
Yeah, the Dall Sheep, for me, I've always had this passion for getting into the mountains and the mountain animals and just where they're at, because it's so hard to get to and the effort that is put out just to get there. If you do come away with a good image, that's the reward right there. Well, it's a reward just getting out there and getting to experience it.
We talk about that all the time. A lot of it's the effort to get there, right? That makes a cool image.
Yeah.
It may not be something that the masses like, but it's something that you have a strong attachment to, right?
Whether it's something I think a lot of people will like or not, if I personally like it myself, then that's worth it for me, just to get out and get that.
The combination of the exercise and then the reward, the memory of the experience when it does work out. And why I kind of brought that up was yesterday we met up briefly at a trailhead, and you were hiking several miles further than us, and you were going for sheep, and you left out ahead of us, or we got sidetracked in another area of this valley. Before we knew it, we saw you up there with the sheep. That was impressive.
Oh yeah, up on the mountaintop there.
No time at all. Yeah, right on. So what got you into wildlife and nature photography? When did the spark start?
It kind of around the time I was in high school. I grew up hunting and fishing and in the outdoors in general, and my dad was in the Air Force, and we traveled a lot, so we got to see a lot of different places. But once we settled here in Alaska, it was a place where he always wanted to come, and so when he got stationed here, it was just kind of like landing in paradise, and then we started doing all the backcountry trips and camping and hunting, and I wanted to kind of have something more to take away from it than just the experience, just have good images of the experience itself and the places and animals or people that you might meet along the way. And so I took my dad's old camera. It was a 35 millimeter Canon AE1 and a couple of old zoom lenses, and just started playing around with it. And then I kind of got out of it a little bit, mainly because I was really looking at trying to make something out of it. And towards the end of high school, there's a few people that I kind of let them talk me out of it, because it was photography is a very popular industry, and to make it in that is kind of a 1 in a million thing. It seems like to at least make a big business out of it and have a steady income. So I kind of dropped it a bit, and up until about a few years ago, then I started doing it a little bit more with a friend of mine, Melissa Mead, and started picking up a little more gear and deciding, I'm just gonna do this. I mean, it's late in life, but so what? It's fun and it's a good time.
Well, for picking up a little bit of gear, you got quite the little selection already.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate where I haven't made a lot of money in photography, but I've got a career that affords me the blessings to be able to pick up a little bit of gear here and there and build a nice kit.
Yeah. So you want to tune into our YouTube channel because we're going to go through his kit and just do it as a video, which would be kind of cool to check out. I think it'll be a new little segment we'll do where when we meet people like yourself that are out there doing it, just say, what's in your pack?
Well, there's no doubt. You know, there'll be nuggets that we'll find out in each and every photographer. So we'll learn stuff.
The dirty little secrets.
Well, the good ones too, the shortcuts, the hacks, the tips. And, you know, for somebody who does sheep and mountain hiking so often, so frequently, what you would have, I'm sure we'll all be, you know, there'll be a few things in there that our audience will enjoy and we might not have thought of too. So I think that's great.
Yep.
And you're not late in life, brother.
Yeah.
So this is, it's watching you do those sheep and then meeting up yesterday for sure. And the hike out, we had fun yesterday.
Yeah, but let's save that for the end.
We're going to keep that as a secret.
Save that one.
All right, stay tuned.
I just want to know. So being in Alaska, we talked about the sheep being one of your keystone species, but you get to photograph everything.
You get to photograph everything. Yeah, depending on the time of the year. I mean, there's so many options available. You know, you've got, in the spring, you know, you've got, if you really want to get after it, you can find places where the bears are coming out of hibernation and not get on the dens, but you have a general idea of where they've denned up in the fall and where they'll come out in the spring, and so you can get some really nice images with bears in the snow and up in the high hills or mountainside, or get a nice panoramic shot with bears.
We need to paint a picture though, because Jerry is extremely in shape, I'm assuming, after seeing what he did yesterday. He's one in shape individual. So climbing in these hills, he calls them, which are really mountains, it's a big deal. So if you're going to try to go up there after sheep or bears or whatever, that's the base right there. You're in shape and you're able to do it. But then,
yeah, it definitely helps. You know, being in shape, it allows you to, you know, you can carry your gear and cover a lot of ground and not get tired as quickly. So spending a lot of time out doing this is kind of what has always kept me in shape. Is not so much, not really getting into the gym or anything, but just being active, constantly active all the time, whether you know, it's a quick after work hike or coming out for just an evening, and I'll run out, you know, 2-3 miles into the backcountry, which isn't very far in a lot of places in a sense, but if you know, your approach is 1.5 miles, and then you've got 1.5 miles of 3,000 foot of vertical gain, then that kind of changes things a little bit.
It changes a lot of things. And then you're also, you know, we were talking about this last night, because after that hike yesterday, I'm always looking at the number of steps I walk, right? Because I try to stay in shape as best I can too. So we were looking at it, and it tells you the number of steps that you walk, but it doesn't tell you, oh, well, the equivalent to that carrying a 30-pound pack or a 40-pound pack, you know, if you're burning 1,000 calories, you're probably burning more like 1,200 or 1,300 calories when you factor in those kinds of things. So, not to derail us, I liked where you were going with that thing before. Seasonally in Alaska, they're stuffed every season. You started out in the spring and you're talking about bears, but then there's tons of shorebird stuff. Do you get into that at all?
So I've gotten into shorebirds quite a bit, and what really got me into the birds was another friend of mine. He's a really amazing photographer, and he's got some of the best bird images I've ever seen. Is Jamin Hunter, and he lives here locally as well. And so he kind of got me into the bird bug to kind of fill that gap in between where you've got the seasons where you're looking for the big game and they may not necessarily be readily available. So there's always something going on, whether it's big or small. So the shorebirds really kind of fills the gap, and you get to see some really cool places, you know, where they're at, you know, coastal areas of Alaska where most people wouldn't think to go spend any time out there. But you know, you end up going for shorebirds in the spring, and you see black bears on the beach somewhere, you know. So it kind of,
right.
There's always a little nugget in there for, you know, if you've got a little sense of adventure to want to get out and find things, it's there.
So there's Cordova, I know, has a Shorebird Festival, and so does Homer, right?
Homer does.
And then there's Potter's Marsh, which is just outside of Anchorage.
Yeah.
It's got some pretty cool stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity. So that takes us into spring. So is there anything else in spring that you look at?
So also in the springtime, you've got all the animals are bearing their young. So which is one thing you want to be very careful about is getting around any animal where if it's got offspring, because there's a potential for something bad to happen. But at a distance, at a respectful distance, and then especially using a super telephoto lens, there's opportunities to get moose, bears.
What about caribou? Do you get out of Anchorage? Caribou's a little tougher, right? Because you got to go pretty far. But
caribou is harder. Yeah, you've got to go quite a ways, and it seems like the better opportunities for caribou locally. Probably Denali, up around there, interior Alaska. There's a few places in the local mountains down south, a couple hours drive, where you could get to caribou, but it would take some work to get in there because it's
a commitment.
It's a commitment. Yeah, it would be an overnight at least.
Yeah, and then of course you also have any of the little ducklings and goslings and all the little shorebirds that do nest around here, because a lot of them are traveling further north. They're just to have these festivals because they show up at a certain 2-week period and they're still on their way to go wherever they're going. So take us into summer. What's your favorite things in summer to shoot in Alaska?
So getting into summer, you've got the bull moose. They're starting to sprout their antlers, and everything starts to green up, so you get these amazing green landscapes, and there's still some snow in the mountains in certain areas, so you've got the combination of the greenery and then the snow-capped peaks, and you could get a nice bull and velvet in the valley and get a nice background.
Right. And then black bears and grizz, probably. I mean, but that's not like a given thing. The moose, you can kind of say, up in that valley, chances are probably pretty good that there's a moose that lives up there.
Or that valley hiking up,
but
for sure.
the bears are that way too. I think you can kind of count on a certain area, but bears are very keyed in on what they're going to be eating. So if it's summertime, there's no berries out yet.
Yeah.
The fish runs are good for certain grizz in those areas, or brown bears. But I know there's a lot of black bears around Anchorage, but you can't really say, today I'm going to go do a black bear, because it's hard to find them, right?
It can be, yeah. There's some people that they dedicate a lot of time to just driving around and looking for bears, and they kind of get a little bit of a pattern to where they go out 2 or 3 times and they'll get a shot of a bear, but that's taken a lot of time and effort to just for that specifically, and you really wouldn't be doing anything else. And then the summer around town and up in anywhere the alpine areas, they don't have the berries, they don't have the fish, so they're just kind of scavenging around, or they hunt after moose calves in the spring and into the summer, digging up roots, marmots, ground squirrels,
and even grass and just the
grass,
vegetation.
yeah, the
they
sedge.
Can survive on all that stuff.
The low sedge grass has got it's got a high, for what it is, it's got a very high protein content, and so they get a lot of nutrition from that too.
Yep. All right, but I'm sure summertime is a good time to do sheep, right? You're probably going to do sheep anytime you can do sheep. You're going to go do sheep, right? So
yeah, anytime. If there's a spot where there's sheep hanging around, I'll try to get them dialed in and patterned. And
when do they finish their molt, their coat, so that they look slick again?
So about this time of year, mid-July, and some places with like goats, they may carry into almost August, and but usually around late June and then early to mid-July, they've all shed their winter coat, and they almost look naked. It's just like a naked white sheep.
So short.
It's extremely short hair.
And the rams, would they molt before the ewes?
It's all about the same time.
Very good. Do you want to continue
legs
on
are
with the
still
seasonality?
falling asleep.
Right.
Yeah. So let's go into.
This is pretty comfortable, but you have to keep shifting on.
Yeah, you have to shift around. So let's take it into fall, which is
so much going on in the fall.
Yeah. Fall is
where do you start?
There's not enough. Fall's not long enough.
It's not long enough. There's not enough hours in the day. You start to get shorter days. But one advantage of fall, though, is you do start to get the true sunrise and sunset, much different than summer, where the sun might get low on the horizon, but you might not always get that beautiful burning sunset. And fall is really nice for that. And then you get the fall colors. Everything starts to change. The leaves turn yellow, orange, red, and then the tundra on the hillside just turns these vivid, bright fuchsia and purple, red, pink. So you get these amazing landscape and background shots with any of the wildlife that you find.
And then of course all that wildlife is prime.
It's prime.
They just look. They got their winter coats.
Perfect condition.
Coming on. They're kind of ready. Well, at least the moose and the sheep. Well, the sheep are a little bit later, but
Caribou.
Moose and caribou are very ready at that time.
Yeah.
Some people don't believe the colors on the tundra. It's just surreal, the kaleidoscope, how vibrant it can be. And truly, for a couple of weeks, it is that. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, so some people would think that it was almost, that you tweak those colors out in Lightroom or Photoshop. But, if you actually got to see it and see the colors, it's
right
really
light,
that bright and vivid.
Right. It is. And in the right light, it's amazing. So that, I guess we're back onto the same species then. And then in the winter, it would probably be the same thing. Well, I don't know. You probably don't do too much. What about sheep in winter? I'm
short
sure
days, though, right?
Short days.
That would be the compromise.
The days get so short that you're extremely limited on where you can go. Unless you're dedicated enough to want to go in winter camp, you can really take advantage of the daylight then. But it's very hard because it's, eventually it'll get to a point where it really won't be light until 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then by the time 2:30 rolls around, the sun's already going down. And
do you find in winter most days are overcast? Is it hard to find a high-pressure day for more vibrant light?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It just it just depended on the weather. But you get a lot of clear days and you get a lot of cloudy days too.
So that's pretty good for the seasonality. I had another question. I don't want to monopolize.
Not at all. No, this is good. I'm taking in the view. I love it here. We can talk and sit here all day long.
So living in Alaska, you get, just in Anchorage, you can access so much. And I'm sure you've had a chance to go to some remote areas too, whether you fly in or drive to Fairbanks or do whatever. If you could, what was that one place where you're like, I really want it? You haven't been yet, but it's on your list. It's that one thing that you want to go do in Alaska that, as a local that you have studied, it's possible. It just takes the time and the money and the effort.
I think for me it would be the muskox. I've had an opportunity to work in some remote locations and out in the bush and above the Arctic Circle, and you get places where you see muskox and they're there and you kind of get them patterned out and that you can do it. It just takes the time to take a week and either go fly out or hike out somewhere and just spend that time to get those images. It's depending on the season, like if you're looking at fall in the Arctic, your window is so short. It's about, you could have about 2 weeks of where bloom, I guess, for lack of a better word, when everything is bright and the colors are popping and blows up, and you've got those amazing fall colors. There's 10 or 14 days where it's really prime, and if you could plan it around that and get those muskox out there, I think you could get some really amazing stuff.
I'm with you on that. I would love to do that. That's one of those bucket list things for me, for sure.
We've talked about possibly even doing it this fall, but we need to do a little more research to get it nailed down.
I think if you miss that window, then wait till the snow hits and then go out.
Right. And a lot of people think about Alaska and the snow, and you think, well, that's just miserable, but it's not that miserable, right? I mean, if you're prepared for it, you could get out there. Sure, you can get weathered in as far as flying to a place or not being able to get in and out that way, but once you're there, it's not too bad, right?
Yeah. If you've got the gear and you're ready for it, you've got warm. Depending on the season, you've got gear to stay dry. You've got gear to stay warm. Somewhere where you can have a fire.
Right.
You could survive a lot just with the right equipment and the right knowledge for the backcountry.
So, on a different subject, your career currently is a police officer.
Yeah.
And before that, just to touch on, was forestry. Was that right?
I was a fishing guide before that.
Fishing guide, right?
Yeah. So kind of right out of high school, I did the average high school odd jobs, coffee shops, or things like that, and I kind of capitalized on my knowledge of growing up fishing and hunting with my dad and spending time in the backcountry here. So I got into being a fishing guide and had my own business for quite a while, but it wasn't really it didn't really have the personal satisfaction that I was looking for in something. And so I had a lot of friends that worked in law enforcement, and they kind of steered me into that career field, and so I started looking into it and decided it would be something that was worth at least trying for a couple of years. And once I really got started into it, it's for me, it's just very personally rewarding, because you're never gonna be able to help everybody or save the world essentially, but your own little corner of the world, you could at least make it a little bit better for yourself and for the community. So that's what I get out of it.
That's excellent.
Well, and the thing that you said yesterday or the day before is your schedule's pretty sweet.
And the schedule is very nice, yeah.
Gives you the time to do that and do it well, but then you get 1 week on, 1 week off?
Yeah, right now it's 1 week on, 1 week off. So I work a week and I've got 7 days to go adventure. And
so that's perfect to develop your photography career, because it gives you need time. It's really hard to juggle.
Yeah.
If you have a real job that's 8 to 5 and you have to go, I'm going to go shoot till 8, and then I got to go to work. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to get off work. And summers in Alaska, you could do that, but you're going to not get much sleep.
You're going to sacrifice your sleep and your, probably some of your health too, just burning the candle at both ends constantly. And
right.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah. I'm feel days that are dropping off the end of my life right now.
The counter's winding backwards.
Right.
So part of the reason why I brought up was the police work is, how do I say this? The photography, you must see a lot of stuff in helping the community that there'll be stressful moments and stuff. And I'm thinking that your hiking in wilderness, your camping in wilderness, and your nature and wildlife photography help balance that. It's a break. It's a de-stressor.
It really does. It's you think of like kind of you're winding up a spring and all that stress and tension, and towards the end of your work week, you just feel like you're just gonna you'll go crazy if you got to go deal with one more thing that is extremely stressful, or some crisis. And once I get out somewhere like this, then it all just fades away, and then the spring is unwound and you can just go relax and do your own thing for a while.
It's a great balance, to have the physical exercise that you do and then the creative outlet. I get it.
It's cool.
I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's not. I'll stop right there. I'll correct myself. It's not the same. I'm not, I don't have the level of stress or interaction that you do. But just for me, from the marketing world and editing world, to get out, it's a total de-stressor. And
well, I can see that's got to be really stressful too, because you've got deadlines and
Well, yeah,
probably
but it's
deadlines
it's
and
not,
contracts.
It's not like
and-
there are criminals that,
Yeah.
that I'm having to protect other innocent people from their activities and drugs and all kinds of situations, that you would be faced with. So certainly appreciate what you do that way and see how this and what we all do, and we get this from it, each and every one of us, as far as just being in wilderness and what it means. And for those that share this passion, everybody listening understands it, but so much of society doesn't, to go on a canoe trip, on a hiking trip, a wildlife photography trip, anywhere into the outdoors is a de-stressor. Just the fresh air, the scents, the exercise, the natural smells is what I mean by scents and stuff, that it's just real. And we don't feel that in our rushed lifestyles nowadays. So it's important to have that. So I think it's a great schedule that you're able to have a week on, week off. That is logical to me for law enforcement.
It's definitely nice, and if I took some vacation time and took a week off, I'd be off for 3 weeks, and
Right, that too.
where else could you take a week off of work and be off for almost a month and just
Right.
go play?
I can think of two other firemen are
Mhm.
very similar, and then pilots.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those are the two careers, which there's a lot of in Alaska. You get people that have those types of careers because, yeah, if you fall being so awesome and being so short, if you timed it just right, you'd get 3 weeks of just nonstop.
Oh, you could take vacation and just hit the prime of the fall and
Right, right.
get everything you ever wanted to get, and just spend all winter working on photo editing and
Right. Yeah, when it's dark outside, you can just be cranking away listening to the Wild and Exposed podcast and working on Lightroom.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll put this in our show notes, of course, but your Instagram, you have great imagery up there, and the sheep stuff pops right out to me, of course. Can you tell the audience how to find you on Instagram? Because it's not just your name. I like your handle.
It's not just I think that if you search my name, because my name is on the profile, so
Yes.
if you search Jerry Herrod, you could find it. But it's AK Scenic
Right on.
is the handle on the profile.
That's a good one to get.
And I am snacking. I love blueberries. I've declared that on more than one occasion, but I'm snacking on a blueberry almond packaroon by Heather's Choice. And on Instagram, it even highlights that you're an ambassador for Heather's Choice. Can you tell us, this is delicious and lightweight, and why would you pack these for what you do for your hikes and your affiliation with?
So packing those, it's what you get out of such a small little treat, I guess. The packaroons, I mean, they've got a lot of high calories, high fat. It's kind of what you need for if you're going to be going out and doing a long approach and then a long climb. Bad weather. It's got everything you need to kind of keep that energy up and keep you going. And it's not full of a lot of fillers like what you might see in a lot of other food. I mean, not to knock any food brand or product, but it's a lot of natural ingredients, whole food, like shredded coconut, dried blueberries, in this one, maple syrup.
You can actually read the ingredients.
Almond flour.
Yeah, who doesn't love maple syrup? So these 2 packaroons are 170 calories, but you're right. I mean, it's all natural ingredients made exclusively for Heather's Choice in Anchorage, Alaska.
They're an up-and-comer, man. I've been hearing about them for 2 or 3 years, and I knew the woman that started it was based in Anchorage, and then seeing you with this stuff, I'm going to have to give it a go.
I'm not sharing this packaroon. It's not very big.
No, you can have that.
All
I
right.
mean, just for future, because that was one thing I noticed yesterday with you, and you had said something because we'd stopped where we met up with you, and you were eating some stuff, and then that's when we saw the Heather's Choice. But then you went on to say, I don't know what you climbed yesterday, at least 1,000 vertical feet.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah.
And then we did 6 miles, and so you probably did 8 to 10 miles total.
Yeah, probably around 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Around thereabouts.
And you said something about you were fueling up on the way up, you were fueling up on the way down, you were fueling up on the flat, and it's just important to have that because I think it does make it. I don't think people. I'm guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
I just get focused. It's like I need to get out there and get my images, and you don't take time, and then you start wearing out, and I think you can perform much better, whether you're hiking or even
You really
shooting.
can. Yeah, it's if you start to get tired, you get focused onto something, and if you forget to eat, then you'll start lagging in your physical performance, and that affects everything from being able to get to the animal to begin with to being able to concentrate and focus once you get there.
And it factors in for Alaska type photography.
Yeah.
Not to say that you can't, you go to a refuge in the lower 48, and a lot of times you can just drive around in your car and pop images out the window, and that's great. You can get some really cool stuff, but then it's pretty easy to be out of shape and pretty easy not to have to worry about those nutritional requirements. But I find everything that I go after in Alaska, it requires a little bit of work, whether you're riding a bike or whether you're hiking or whether you're, even if you're going on a canoe trip or a raft trip. I mean, there's a lot of physical work that you're going to do to put out. And so it's important to pay attention to that kind of stuff.
And especially the mountain stuff. Safety, right? You need to keep your coordination and your wits about you. And becoming, for me, if I don't eat for 5 or 6 hours, I can become lightheaded, or if I'm not hydrated, just hiking too much. No, I don't get hangry.
You don't get hangry.
I don't get hangry.
That's good.
No, none
I
of that.
spent too much time with you. I'm glad you don't get hangry.
You don't turn into a
you would know by now
a
if I
diva when you get hangry.
I get turned into which?
Turn into a diva.
No.
No.
Thankfully, I just have to. Actually, it's fine, but I just need to keep my coordination about me, and so it's being smart about what snacks you pack in your kit for those mountain hikes. It's not just high sugar. I mean, these would carry you further. So, what about hydration? How do you deal with that on your mountain hikes?
So it's kind of dependent on how far I'm going to go. Like yesterday, if it's just a day trip or an afternoon, I'll carry a couple of liters of water with me. But if it was more of a distance, and if I was going to go overnight or 7 to 10 days somewhere, then I would probably start off with a couple of liters of water and just pick up my water on the way. I'd take a filter and I'd just carry as light as I can with water. And normally, here there's a water source readily available, at least within a couple of miles in any direction. So you could find a spring or a little seep in the mountainside, or like in most valleys we'll have creeks or river running through. So
do you carry like a life straw or what's that other thing? What's that thing that you put in water and stir it around?
The Steri-Pen, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use something like that?
I don't really use that just because it's battery dependent.
Right.
Most of the time, I'll just take a little Sawyer Mini.
Yep.
Because they're so light, and they're, I don't want to say that they're disposable. You could use one all season, and then at the end of the season you just throw it in the recycler, and because it's all recyclable material, I think.
Right. And what do you mean by that? Is it's a water filter?
Yeah.
And that Katadyn makes them, MSR makes them. Sawyer is another brand, right?
Yeah, and it's the Sawyer. What I like about the Mini is it only weighs like 2 ounces, and so you would have like 2 water bladders, and one would be your gray water for your filter, and then so you'd fill that up and then screw your filter onto the end of the bladder, and then squeeze that into your fresh water. So it's a handy little system, and it's. Sometimes it could be hard because you can't always get enough to fill that bladder. Like it's hard to fill if you just found standing water. It's real hard to fill those bladders. You might want to have a Nalgene or something to kind of transfer it.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're in Alaska, you just need to pay attention to all that stuff, because it'd be real easy to get hydrated, and it'd be real easy to drink right out of a river or a creek or a stream or whatever you think might be a spring, but it's really easy to get Giardia.
It is, and I'm guilty of drinking just straight unfiltered water, especially in sheep country. If you get somewhere where there's runoff or glacier, some people filter their water, period, no matter what. But I've been to places where I figured, well, I doubt there's any beavers on a glacier 6,000 feet up a mountain.
Right,
so it's
right.
probably fairly safe.
Yeah, I would say I would lean in that direction too. I've not done it. I'm kind of that filter every time guy, but
Well, they're just so easy and portable now to carry with you, so why
but
not just
today
to
I
be
don't have
sure?
one. You know, I just have a little bottle of water, and that's
Right.
about it. But we're not that far. I mean, 6 miles is not that big of a deal.
So are we going to do Jerry's kit just for YouTube then, instead of on here? I mean,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah,
So if you
because
want
it's so visual. I think
Sure.
we want to see that kind of stuff. So make sure you tune in for that, and we'll shoot that as soon as we're done with this. But
Yeah.
I think we're almost at 45 minutes. So let's
We
take the last 15 and let's talk about yesterday,
right, that's what I was gearing up for.
the cliffhanger.
Right.
Cliffhanger, yeah.
It wasn't that big of a cliffhanger. I mean, it definitely got my hackles up, but it wasn't. I didn't feel threatened.
Well, it was something we definitely had to be focused and pay attention to, and it's a reality in this amazing landscape that can
So
happen.
let's set the scene. So we're in a place that we've all been quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've seen bears in here,
Mhm.
but it's always way off at a distance. It's always on
Yeah,
that far ridge.
See them on a ridge or up on the high alpine on one of the hillsides.
And it's blacks and grizz.
Yes.
And so who wants to take it from there?
Well, you and I were filming a vlog for our YouTube channel, and that was amazing what happened with the moose that came and paid us a visit while we were filming. So check that out as well. But we'd finished that, and Jerry had hiked off the mountain back down to where we were in the valley, and just coincidentally we met up, and we were visiting, and we were going to hike back out together and see what we came across, expecting to see more moose because of late time in the day. And as we were heading out, moose started popping out of bushes left and right, and then this big bull was running away at probably 300-400 yards from us. And
I think
you know,
you said, Michael, you said, hey, there's a grizzly bear. I
Yeah.
think you saw it first. There.
Well, and I think just to back up just a second, when you see, we're
Yeah.
in around these moose all the time.
Right.
So you recognize different behavior right away. And we saw this bull kind of not walking off. He was kind of trotting off.
Right,
And
something
he
was up.
wasn't, he was on a mission. He wasn't
and he'd look
sticking
back.
around.
He'd run. He'd look back.
But we still hadn't seen anything. So we were all thinking, that's odd.
Yeah.
But then you just kind of say, well, who knows? It could be bugs too, right? You see caribou all the time go bananas just because the bugs just get to them.
Botflies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Warbles.
But so then we walked a little bit further, looked over, and I looked down, and I'm like, that log looks awful lot like a bear. And then I said, there's a bear, and sure enough, there's a bear. So I guess the reason I bring up this setting is, well, I photograph bears all the time up here, but I'm generally in areas where the bears are known behavior.
Mm-hmm.
They're very used to people, and it's not uncommon to be 20 yards away from a bear in a certain area where they are accustomed to people, and there's
Not on
regulations.
purpose. It just happens.
Well, no, even on purpose. Like in Lake Clark,
Oh,
they
yeah, for
allow
that
you to be at
situation.
a certain distance
Right.
that is, and I don't think it's 20 yards. I don't know what it is. It's closer than most places.
Yeah, 40 or 50 yards with a telephone.
Yeah.
No problem.
And
For-
if the bears come towards
that
you,
sit-
you can let them walk right by you.
In that
You were saying that
situation.
too, Jerry,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
you
'cause
could
they're-
be down on a river somewhere, and a bear's gonna. Well, if they're fishing, they're not looking at you as food. They're looking. They got plenty of salmon.
Yeah,
to eat.
they've got other things on their mind. They're not really concerned with you being there if they've got salmon in the river, and they're trying to just build that calorie content for the fall.
So let's build
So-
that out then. So we see this bear, and let's take it from your perspective. You're up here all the time.
Let me throw something in if you
Okay.
don't mind. And that this is big wilderness country here, and these bears move a lot. So it's not like a concentration on a salmon stream.
Right.
And when they move a lot, it could be a bear that came in from 10 miles out in remote wilderness that just doesn't see people. So we have to be a little more cautious because we don't know how
Totally.
exposed they are
Totally.
to humans and how they'll react. So in that situation, and there were some of the variables of last night too that threw a little twist into it.
Having not had any experience down here with the bear, I immediately was like, okay, so what would you do? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, you're the guy that probably spends more time than any of us up here. What was your thought process?
I mean, these bears here. I mean, they're the bears, at least in the Chugach. I mean, they're not out to get people, but I think these are known to be more aggressive than bears elsewhere, because there's every year there's negative bear encounters on the other side of the range, like around the backside of Eagle River. There's maulings that happen fairly consistently on a yearly basis. There's one or two a year in the backcountry here, and I think last year there was a fatality, and so my thought kind of was, give it about 100-yard space would probably be reasonable. I mean, for any bear that you would encounter in the backcountry anywhere, But I think this bear, for whatever reason, the direction that we were going, he was kind of just keeping the pace with us a little bit there for a while, and he really didn't care for us at one point. Kind of did a little woofing and huffing.
And the difficulty is that grass is so tall down there that, as big as these bears are, you still couldn't see the bear a lot of times. So you don't want to make forward progress if you don't know where the bear's at. Because if he or she or it decides to hole up
Mm-hmm.
and take a nap or whatever, you definitely don't want to walk up
and
on
the
it.
bears, bears are like people. They're individuals. So, you could get. I mean, the bear was aware that it knew we were there. It saw us. And, it had an idea of where we were. But one of the issues was the wind was coming from the bear to us. So he couldn't smell us.
Right.
So I don't know if it kind of felt threatened that we were trying to make our way in that same general direction, even though we were keeping that safe distance.
Right.
It still didn't really like it or care for it
Didn't
much.
understand.
I think
Why we were keeping. Well, we weren't trying to keep up with it. But we'd lose sight and we'd wait for half an hour.
Yeah,
and you assume it's gone, and eventually it did.
And people at home were probably saying, "Well, why didn't you just walk around it?" You really can't. I mean, we were walking on a trail that is
We did veer off to the side.
We eventually veered off because that was our only option to be safe for both the bear and us. But it's not that easy. I mean, you're dealing with boggy stuff. You're dealing with high grass, and
there was a river. We couldn't, unless we were going to wade across the river.
Right.
When most of the grass out there, it's anywhere from 4 to 6 feet tall. So I mean, it hides a full-grown bull moose out there.
Right. So it was an interesting situation. It was. I'm not going to say it was fun to be in, but it was a good encounter, and it was a good learning experience. It was.
Well, we took our time.
Lots
of time. And it was right near the end of the day, so we were trying to time it out to be back out of the country by dark. But at the end of the day, of course, it was like 11:30 last night. It was still daylight, but definitely we respected the bear and gave it space. But it was interesting, and one of the things that was to our advantage for safety in the situation, there were 4 of us.
Yeah, I think
as a group instead of just a single person. That's
Can you
important.
imagine being out there by yourself in that situation? I mean, I can imagine it, and that's what was going through my mind last night is, okay, so if I'm here by myself, which I frequently do here, what would I have done? I probably would have backed off further than we did as 4, and I'd probably just sat there for a long time and just waited it out. But then still,
there's no way of knowing. There's no sight line.
There, you gotta have your hackles up. There's
no sight line.
That's one of those situations where you probably have your bear spray out. The other thing that I was worried about is since the wind was coming from the bear to us, and it wasn't like a breeze, it was a wind.
It was a steady wind, yeah.
I was a little concerned if you did have to deploy bear spray.
Right.
That wind was strong enough that it could just throw that bear spray right back on us, right? So that's not good.
Right. So that's why we pivoted down the one side, tried to parallel the bear over maybe 150 or so yards. But
we did that, and it was harder going, and that's the other thing too. If the bear did come down there, it's like you have less options.
You wouldn't know necessarily. That's just the topography and the vegetation. We thankfully caught sighting of it here and there,
right,
and could track its progress. But there was no guarantee it didn't do a 90-degree turn at some point and show up in front of us, and that was the benefit of having 4 and several bear sprays and just being on our toes and giving it lots of time and space. And it did move off.
It seemed like it was down. I think you said it looked like it was hunting down there. It's kind of how it was acting, where it was like going around the alder patches and
like looking for a
sniffing
calf
around
or something.
like a dog, and you wonder if you were by yourself, would it come after you?
Right, you do. I doubt it, but that question's out. It happens. I think what is good about an encounter like that is it definitely just raises your awareness. And, you can get in that little safety, like, take it for granted. Do I need bear spray today? I don't want to carry the extra weight. I think you just got to do it. You just can't not be prepared when you come out here just because it is a real thing. But I don't think people need to be scared of bears. And I don't think it's going to keep me from coming in here at all.
Well, you accept it as part of your wilderness experience, and our senses are heightened because of it, but you can never take it for granted. And a lot of people are innocent people, and bad things happen once in the blue moon. But it can happen anywhere to anybody, in the city, wherever. We choose to be in wilderness, and it's a matter of educating oneself and being smart in bear country.
You have a much better chance of getting a car accident than you do getting attacked by a bear.
Hit by a bus in the city, stepping off the sidewalk.
Right.
More of a chance of that than getting mauled by a bear.
Agreed.
So it was a great way to wrap up the day as far as the experience yesterday, and then we got back up in some high country as we were hiking out and glassed a bunch of moose that were nice to see. But let's do one more thing. And maybe we did this earlier. I don't remember. But we came back to the same area this morning, and you looked down in that same valley where that bear was at. Right. Okay.
And one of the little things that gave us a sense of, wow, that bear's probably gone, is we saw tons of moose.
Mm-hmm.
If that bear was still hanging around, I don't think we would have saw it. These moose aren't scared of the bears either. A mature moose, sure, it can fall prey to a bear, but chances are it's not going to. A healthy moose is always going to probably get away.
Right.
So, but when we saw this moose, it's like, okay.
They'll still get out of the bear's way, right?
Yeah, they're definitely not going to ask for trouble, but they're not going to be they're agile enough to just get out of trouble. But my point is we saw these moose down there, so it's like, I'll bet you that bear's not even around anymore.
Right.
He's probably 10 miles up the valley or something.
Well, and some of the moose are bedded, some are feeding. There were cows, there were calves, there were other bulls. Just the whole atmosphere was calm.
Right.
That we glassed across
so
the valley.
So that gives you a peace of mind, too. And that's just more about being experienced and being out in the woods and being comfortable with that sort of thing. So we took a little break a minute ago. Thought of a few other things to ask Jerry about the sheep thing.
Yeah, let's finish with his favorite place on planet Earth to be at this point in time, and up with sheep, and he can highlight some of his. He's got a few tips or hacks, strategies that help him up there. And
if you're going to be a sheep photographer,
right?
Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody because it just because of the effort that it takes to get there.
It's just, let me throw this in. It's about me once or twice a year, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because it is so much work to do that. But you probably every day, if you had the chance, you would be doing it.
If I had the chance, yeah, I would probably do it every day, and I would even do multiple days. Yeah, these bugs. Even in the wind, you can't get away from them.
I just didn't want them to bite you right on the cheek.
That's the fun of podcasting out in the wild.
Right. So, and I interrupted you. You said you would do it every day.
I would do it every day if I could, mainly just because of my love for the mountains. But, part of going after sheep or goats or anything that's up above tree line, you've got to have the gear for it. You've got to have a little bit of experience and know-how working your way around the mountains, because it's very easy to start going after something, and you get focused on an animal and you're just going and you're climbing and it's getting steep, but you can get into places that you can climb up into it, but once you're up in there, if you're not paying attention, you'll be stuck. You won't be able to climb out. And I've early on I've been guilty of that a few times where I actually started to get a little worried, because here I am, I'm 6,000 feet on top of a mountain and I've just climbed up a little chute, and now am I stuck? Or luckily I've been able to summit in those circumstances, but now I just, regardless of what's up there, if I'm making a hard climb after something, I'm really paying attention to where I'm going and just not getting into those situations.
It's really easy too when you're shooting, right? Because if you're shooting an animal, you pay less attention to the topography. I mean, you're paying attention to it because you got to cross it, but a lot of times you'll go over something not even really thinking about it. You're just shooting, and then all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And can I go back that way? And I guess to put it in perspective, when you're climbing up, I don't know, there's something about climbing up that makes it so much easier. But coming down, that what you just climbed up can be really difficult, like you said.
It could be a little tricky, and there's some of those places up there. It's so steep where if you did fall, especially carrying all your gear, I mean, it would be bad enough to take a fall just with nothing, but with all your gear, it'd be even worse. And you take a tumble up there, you wouldn't stop until you probably hit the bottom. So I mean, it's there's been occasions where sheep hunters and goat hunters have been out, and unfortunately some of them have slipped and fell and succumbed to their injuries from it, or gotten hurt very badly. So you've definitely got to pay attention. It's much different than just like if you're going to go on a walkabout, and if you're looking for moose on more even ground or just hill country, every step you've got to pay attention to, because you don't want to step on a rock and have it break loose. So you're paying attention to every single step, and you're looking at your feet as you're going. And normally you've got, I take an ice axe with me everywhere in case I do slip and fall. There's a chance that you could dig that in, just roll over on it and dig it in and save yourself from taking a slide. I took one last year where I went out with a friend of mine on one of his sheep hunts, and we're off in the backcountry in the Chugach and walking on it had just rained, and this really steep slope, and we're kind of traversing across it to get back to camp, and I took a slip and I slid about 100 feet down this grassy face, and I dug the ice axe in, and I don't think I would have gotten hurt there, but it definitely saved me from just not stopping and sliding all the way down to the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. But that's another thing too. You got to be so careful and know how to use that, because you talk about rolling over on it and digging in, but you also could just roll on it and hurt yourself too.
You could,
right?
yeah. It's good to get practice with any tools you're going to use in the backcountry. You wouldn't want to just take it and just go.
Right.
Even if you wanted to get some instruction in it, and learn how to use it. Crampons is another thing too, is not so much in this time of year, but when it gets to be, October, November.
So the crampons, what are those other little things that are like chains? They're not necessarily called crampons. They're called...
So you've got, so there's full-on crampons, and then you've got the micro spikes, which are really helpful. Yeah, I think there's several brands that make those. I know Catula is one it's very popular, and I've got a set of those. And kind of depending on how harsh the terrain is, I guess, and how much ice is there, you might take those one day, or you might actually take your full-on crampons and your ice axe.
And I can see those little spikes working even on, like you said, with a wet, grassy slope.
Yeah.
They're just going to give you that much more traction that you just feel a little bit more confident. So in addition to that, you had also something white. What is that all about?
We looked up the mountain, and there was additional sheep up there when we were glassing.
Well, and Pilly said, there's Jerry. And I'm like, no, Jerry wasn't wearing white when he saw him. And I'm like, I just couldn't. It had to be you, right? Because we didn't see anybody else over there. And you said there's not that many people that go up there. And Pilly was right for sure. But what is that white thing that you were using?
It's they just call it a white suit. But it's that one in particular, I made that myself on a sewing machine. But it's just a white coverall. It's the top that I've got is kind of like just a hoodie. You just slip it over. It's oversized, and
so you're full on pants too.
And yeah, full on pants too.
Wow, I didn't notice that.
So the idea with that is to kind of, they're what the sheep are used to seeing up on the slopes is another sheep, and which are going to be white, or maybe not necessarily full on white, but there'll be some off white or some grayish white or white color. But to wear the white up there, if you do get spotted, it doesn't always work all the time. So, but it can give you a leg up on getting an extra couple of minutes or maybe that extra 30 seconds before they really decide, hey, that's not a sheep, I need to get out of here. And it could be an advantage that you might have over somebody where they're just up there and, you know, they don't have any whites. And if you get seen, then the sheep might decide they'd spook and run away right away. But with the white suit, there's times where you can get up there and it puts them at ease because they'll see that and they'll say, well, it's white, you know, and it's not really coming after us, so it might be another sheep over there. And I've actually had occasion to where they saw me and got curious and started to actually come over just because they thought I was another sheep, and so they came up close and I got some really good shots that way.
And then I think sheep too, in the times that, and I've done a fair amount with sheep. Certain sheep are just like, it's not a sheep, but they're not chasing me.
Well, they
don't have shooting at me.
They don't have white predators,
and they're not
right.
And they get comfortable with you. I mean, there's times where you can spend all day with sheep.
Yeah, even without any white camo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But so if you can improve your chances by having that, and
it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool idea, and it's not very heavy to carry. It's just another layer, right?
It's just like carrying another layer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we typically wear browns or camouflage, depending on the situation, just colors that blend into the environment, which would look like up on the mountainside it could potentially be a predator approaching them, like a bear and such. So, yeah, the white, that's a great tactic.
Yeah.
Well done.
Good hack.
Yeah.
So, be safe, have the right tools.
For sure.
Practice with them.
Yeah, get some practice.
And
personally, I mean, I like to do it with a buddy too, or a friend, or a second person when the opportunity's there. If it's long in the backcountry, or, and we've touched on this in the podcast before, is just to have an emergency beacon device as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah,
if you are solo.
Here it's so remote. There's most places in Alaska you're not going to have cell phone service. So if you are inclined to want to have some kind of a safety net in case something bad happens, to have a satellite messenger. There's people carry satellite phones with them, some way of just getting a signal out and getting help if you really need it, or just doing a daily check-in. There's a lot of people that do that, and if I go out solo, I'll take something.
Sure.
Just so I can reach out and say, hey, I'm on this mountain now, and tomorrow I'll be the next ridge over, and so if you don't hear from me by then give it 24 hours and send somebody.
Send the cavalry.
Yeah, it's common sense.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.
Be on our podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I would sit and do podcasts here every day. So I hope that our audience has enjoyed going behind the scenes with an Alaskan wildlife photographer who spends the majority of his time hiking through mountain country and some of the insights that's provided. You can find more of our team's content on Instagram, Facebook, on our YouTube channel, and of course at wildandexposed.com. Consult that as well to see some of the images and content that we discussed on today's podcast. I'd like to take a moment and thank our talented and hardworking producer, Missy McKenzie, for all that she does behind the scenes to bring this podcast to you on a weekly basis for your listening enjoyment. Until next time, you've been listening to Wild and Exposed Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.